For those of you who've been coming to weekday Mass this week, our first reading has been from the story of creation, the first couple of chapters of the book of Genesis. And I think it's sometimes, makes common sense for us to assume that that was one of the first chapters written in the book in the Bible. But in reality, it wasn't. The first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis were written hundreds of years before the rest of the book was written. Those 11 chapters were written when the Israelites were in exile in Babylon. And as they were exposed to the Chaldeans' understanding of their faith and gods and their religion, they realized that's not their own experience with God, because by then they had hundreds of years experience with God. It was the God who gave them the promise, the God who reached out to Abraham, the God who gave them the promised land, who set them free from slavery in Egypt, who led them through the desert, fed them with manna and quail, and gave them water from the rock. The God who made them a great nation. And the Chaldeans, their idea of the creation was that there was a battle in the heavens between the good gods and the bad gods, and the good gods won, and out of the corpses of the bad gods, they created the human race to be their slaves. Just imagine how this was counterculturally to what the Israelites knew and experienced God is. So through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, they put down their story of creation. And as we listen to that story, it tells us one thing, that God is a God of order. He put things in a certain order. The whole idea, the first day God created this, the second day, the third day. And they keep repeating, and God saw how good it was. Everything God created is good. And then God created Adam and Eve, and he put them in charge of his creation. That was the order that God installed. God creating Adam and Eve, guiding them, telling them they're in charge of this creation, walking together, talking together. And today, as we listen to the story of the fall, we see a reversal in this ordering of things. Now the serpent, a creature, is the one who's talking to Eve and Adam. She's telling them what to do, not God. And they listened to the serpent. And that was what the original sin is all about. When the human race, Adam and Eve, went against the order that God established in his creation. They were supposed to listen to God who created them, who gave them everything they have, not to listen to a creature. The serpent told them, your eyes will be opened and you'll have wisdom and know good from evil. Well, the only thing that their eyes were opened about is to realize that they are not the God, they're not the creator, that they're not on the same level as God, although God gave them that as a privilege, as a gift, and treated them as co-equal to him in the sense of being stewards of his creation. And that's why they were ashamed and hid themselves from God. And that's what the church talks sometimes about, you here referred to as the natural law. There is a certain order that God created things in. All our teachings about family and marriage and life stems from, because that's what God entrusted to us. And we as the creatures don't have the wisdom nor have the right to change the order that God set up in motion when he created the universe. A lot of times we end up listening to other creatures who tell us, well, no, you can make things better. You can redefine marriage or family. You can redefine the gift of sex that God has given us. It's all about changing the order of creation, the order that God has given to each one of us. To be a disciple of Jesus Christ is to restore that order, to live our lives according to that order, to realize that we're creatures and God the Creator. He knows all things, has all wisdom and understanding, and he imparts that to us. He shares that with us. But when we choose to chart our own way and to recreate that order, that's when we repeat the same sin of Adam and Eve. And that's why we call it the original sin. That's all our struggle. You want to be the creatures determining good from evil. Well, God as a creator, he and only he has the right to determine good from evil.